everyone, and welcome to Growing Together, a gardening podcast with me, John Lamb, and Don Kinsler, a lifelong gardener and the North Dakota State University Extension horticulturist for Cass County. Don, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Still liking this time of the growing season. Lots of vegetables ripening, coming in, and flowers, and so I'm enjoying it. I love it. This is what we wait for all year long, this wonderful growing season.
And things are still just kind of exploding for me. Our tomatoes, we're realizing that we will have to put in better infrastructure for our tomatoes next year.
Infrastructure.
Yeah. If we do squash, we will not try to grow squash up vertically.
A squash tunnel.
Well, you squash tunnel, right. That would be the thing to do. And I think that's what we've been talking about, is doing some kind of archway there. But yeah, it is great. It's been a great time. We've gotten a fair amount of rain here in August. So
it has, all in all, if I look at it, and oftentimes I gauge a growing season by if we get timely moisture, because, if we have a drought year where it's hot and dry and the lawns go dormant and just you have to battle keeping everything watered. But this year, it seems like for much of the area, not all, but much, there's been timely rains. So gardening-wise, growing season-wise, the moisture, it seems, has been adequate for many of us, which is nice. Yeah,
which is good. And so along with that, we're going to talk about mulch today. We're going to talk about something that'll help keep that moisture in, the benefits of mulch and
exactly. And when you think of it, consider everybody's home landscape or a business. If you consider the landscape, the shrubs and everything around the house, the soil is rarely bare. It's mulched with something, rocks. Okay, so we'll talk about all the different things too, conserving moisture with mulch, but also the advantages of rock mulch, wood mulch, and so what do we put around our shrubs that almost all of us have around our foundations?
Well, before we get into that, you've got a question from a listener.
I do, and thank you, Denise, for sending this in. Denise sent some pictures of lilacs. And the lilac, it's pretty easy to paint a visual picture of it verbally. Mm-hmm. The lilac leaves are covered with kind of a white powdery substance, and there's some browning curling in that. And that is powdery mildew, classic powdery mildew, which is a fungus. Lilacs are very susceptible. Peonies will oftentimes get powdery mildew. And once that gray coating, the fungus, develops, there's no washing it off. It looks like a coating you should be able to spray off, but it doesn't come off. And the key is prevention. Once that powdery mildew is entrenched on leaves, the grayish-white coating, it's not going to go away for this season. So if a person is kind of plagued with that commonly each year, then while the leaves are still green and healthy, apply a fungicide. Garden centers have flower vegetable fungicides, and most of them will list powdery mildew on the label. So check with your garden center on that. And so again, the key is prevention. Get a fungicide on before you see the symptoms.
The good thing is that with lilacs are very vigorous, and
it's not going to kill it. The powdery mildew won't kill it.
It's not going to kill it, and if you have to cut it down or cut it back, they will grow back.
They'll regrow easily.
We took out a lilac bush to put in a fence 7 years ago, and it's still popping up in the yard. It's still, every once in a while we'll see shoots that'll come up through one garden or the other, and
they're persistent.
They are persistent.
They are.
It's a good thing to have. It's a good shrub to have because of that, and they will grow.
And we've had a lot of humidity, so there's been a fair amount of fungus type diseases. So I'm not surprised that there's powdery mildew on Denise's lilac. So thanks again very much for sending that in. And anyone who does want to send in some photos of something that's going well or something not going so well, send me an email, donald.kinsler, KINZLER @ndsu.edu.
Well, all right. Well, let's jump into it. Let's talk about, we'd said mulch before, but I think we're going to talk about other things. So basically, we're talking about garden covering, things to cover the ground in your garden or a place where you've a landscaping covering. what are the benefits to this?
Right. Well, when we talk about mulch, sometimes when you say the term mulch, sometimes the first thing we think about is kind of a moisture conserving product that you put out on something to mulch in your vegetable garden or something like that, or mulch around flowers. But kind of that broad term mulch is also applied to the landscape that we put around our houses and businesses. You plant the trees and then you mulch the soil. I've seen very few landscapes, shrub plantings around homes or businesses that are just bare dirt. Usually it's covered with something.
Mm-hmm.
And so that covering is, termed mulch. Now, for years, rock mulch was kind of the way to go. And for many homes and businesses, rock mulch is still kind of the thing. Now, when we had our garden center, when my wife and I had our garden center, rock and plastic as an underlayment were the norm.
Like a plastic tarp or something like that.
Exactly. So we did a lot of that we offered landscape services.
Mm-hmm.
And so the norm, this talking kind of the 80s and early 90s, the norm was to plant the shrubs, whether it's around a home or a business, plant the shrubs, and then you would lay down plastic
Mm-hmm.
As an underlayment, and then cover all that with rock, an inch to inch and a quarter. We used to sell granite rock mulch, which was kind of neat. There was a pinkish cast and a kind of grayish cast, and tan rock was quite common.
Sometimes it could be a little sparkly.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it would be the bigger size rock. That was kind of tough to wheelbarrow and shovel.
Yes.
Those bigger diameter of rocks. And so the plastic came in a roll, so you'd roll it out and then put the rock on top of it. Our landscape crew used to term it a rock and roll.
Smart. I like that.
But anyway, shovels, wheelbarrows and shovels full of rock. That's hard work.
Yes.
So anyway, okay, I mentioned plastic under that. That used to be the norm, but it was interesting. That's what we used around our house the first time when we landscaped around our house. But it's interesting. A number of years later, if you do any replanting or anything, or peel back that rock and plastic, especially in heavy clay soils, what you found was a great amount of compaction. That clay soil was just hard and clammy. A bucket of rocks, 5-gallon bucket of rocks is heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And even though the rock mulch was probably only, 2 inches or so thick, maybe 3, there's a lot of weight, especially heavy clay soil, just over time gets compacted and compressed, and the soil would be clammy, almost, non-aerated. Things grew well under it. It did okay, but I had also seen things not do well under those circumstances, not enough air around the roots. So plastic under a rock mulch fell out of favor. So a few decades ago, along came landscape fabric. Some of it was almost felt-like, but even better than that was a woven, the woven type landscape fabric that allows air in, allows moisture in. Of course, the plastic mulch, moisture would get in around where the shrub was growing out of, so moisture would get in there, but not very good air exchange. So the woven landscape fabric had that air exchange, and water would go down through, and so kind of a more root-friendly atmosphere. So currently, that is used in a lot of landscapes, especially commercial landscapes. Rock will last a long, long time. The individual particles.
It's not going to break down.
Isn't going to break down. So there are advantages to using rock mulch. Many homes, new home and construction, oftentimes rock, makes it very pleasing on top of landscape fabric. And so that has become the norm for many.
And it's also low maintenance.
It is, yeah.
You really don't have to replenish the rock.
Exactly.
And it's not. We'll talk about other kinds of mulch, but it doesn't wash away in the rain that
stays put. Yep, has a nice look. And so there's a lot of advantages to that. The one disadvantage of that is over time, weeds pop up in it. Gosh, have you ever, John, seen maybe a business, maybe it's a fast food place that kind of went out of business, and after about one season, the rock mulch is all full of weeds and growing up, and it looks like an abandoned something. And so weeds will grow in rock. Now, it's interesting, okay, if there's an underlayment in the rock mulch, how do weeds get going in that? Okay, because the weed barrier pretty much is good at keeping weeds out from coming up from below. So, okay, how do weeds get started? Well, over time, it doesn't take too many years. Over time, maybe there's a little dust blows in. The leaves from the shrubs kind of fall down, even if you try to blow them out. Leaves fall down, they kind of disintegrate down in. And pretty soon after a couple of seasons, there is actually a little bit of a soil type material filtering down in between the rock particles. And of course, weed seeds don't take much soil. They'll germinate in the crack of a sidewalk. So weed seeds, which are airborne, many of them are airborne. And so it doesn't take much kind of soil type stuff. And weed seeds will start sprouting in that rock. And weed roots are persistent enough, they tend to find their way down through that fabric, or sometimes they'll just grow in that shallow material. So after a couple of seasons, one can start seeing the possibility of some weeds popping up. So what do we do? Okay, well, there's a couple options. You can take a walk around your yard each evening or every other evening, and if you see some weeds, if you get them while they're tiny, it's not too hard to pull them out. Or you could spot spray with something like glyphosate, carefully spot spraying. But there is a material that is a weed preventer. Preen is the most common one in the yellow and red containers sold at garden centers. Preen is a weed preventer, as in when you apply that material, it's a granule. If any weed seeds start to sprout, it kills them as they're just starting to sprout. So you don't even see the weeds; they're killed as the seed sprouts.
But do you put that on after your shrubs and things start coming in the spring? When do you put preen on?
Yes, it needs to be put on. Well, everything is still weed free.
Okay.
So the person would probably want to get that on sometime in April, because some of the weed seeds will start to sprout fairly early. So a lot of the shrubs maybe start sprouting end of April, 1st of May, probably with leaves. And so a person would want to get that pre-emergent, follow the label as to how much to apply. And also it needs to be watered in to activate those little granules. What preen and other pre-emergents do is when those granules are wet, they form a barrier, kind of a layer, a barrier. And then when the weed seeds start to sprout, that barrier kills them. That chemical barrier kills the weed seeds. And so that can work very well. Now, the active ingredient in preen it's a chemical called trifluralin. Okay, now it's not going to harm established shrubs and trees and all that. It only will kill weed seeds that are sprouting. Okay, the active ingredient trifluralin. The reason I mentioned that is also the active ingredient in the herbicide called Treflan. Again, Treflan works the same way as preen, creating that barrier. And the reason I bring that up is because I've gone to ordering Treflan online. You can get big bags fairly economically. You can order it online. And the label has the rate for trees and shrubs and landscaping.
Okay.
So preen is an option. Treflan is a little more potent. And so for bigger areas that you have shrubs in, it can also be used perennial flowers. It can be put around mulch. We'll talk about in a minute.
It wouldn't kill daylilies, things that come up maybe later.
Yeah. Nope. Because everything coming up from the root is safe.
Okay.
It's only things that would be, or bulb, perfectly safe. It's only weeds. It's only seeds that would be sprouting. Now, when I say seeds, it would also kill, if you were trying to plant a flower garden from seed, it would also kill those seeds. Now, in a landscape too, though, it won't kill a dandelion that's coming back from the root, or it won't kill a thistle. The same way that perennial flowers coming back from a root, perfectly fine, it'll go right through the layer. And weeds themselves that are coming back from a root will not be killed by that. But it can be very effective at keeping the weed pressure down. So again, preen or a related product, Treflan, can be very, very useful. But again, it needs to be put on the rock mulch before the weeds sprout. Also, it's interesting, there is a weed fabric that is impregnated with trifluralin.
Oh, wow.
Yes. It came out, probably at least 20 years ago. But picture the weed control fabric with a bunch of little round dots spaced maybe an inch or so apart, and those dots are impregnated with the trifluralin. And so the fabric there, as moisture comes along, it activates that. And there's enough of it there that lasts quite a number of seasons. So I believe one brand of it is probably called, it's called BioBarrier. And so I have seen local landscapers using that fabric. In fact, our daughter is just redoing her landscape. And when the rock and everything was taken up, I said, oh, there's that trifluralin impregnated because it's got all these little round raised nodules all over the surface of it that had the trifluralin. So you might also investigate that. If you're doing a new landscape, you might investigate with garden centers or landscapes that fabric that has that in it already.
All right. Well, let's take a quick little break. When we come back, we'll more talk about mulch.
Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
All right, we're back, and today we're talking about mulch and using some kind of ground cover or in your garden, covering the soil. And we were talking about rock mulch, and we were talking about the benefits of it, and there are a lot. But you did say that kind of rock mulch's peak period is maybe waning, and while it is, it doesn't, like we were saying, it lasts. Rock lasts. It doesn't break down. It doesn't discolor necessarily. There's a lot of benefits to it. You talked about some of the disadvantages. One is that it can compact the soil. Another one you talked to, for people who are doing this themselves or even getting a landscaping crew, I can attest to this. I spent a summer landscaping, and one of my first jobs was wheelbarrows full of rock through a wet lawn, and I dumped a wheelbarrow. It was just awful. It's hard work.
It is hard work, and not only the initial installation of it, but also if you want to redo, which I mentioned our daughter is redoing it, so they are shoveling it into a wheelbarrow, and of course, and then they're going to go for another option. I think they're going to redo with rock mulch, but in fact, they thought about reusing the mulch because they need to put in new shrubs and et cetera, and do some different things. So they thought, well, maybe we can wash this mulch. Well, they tried washing a number of wheelbarrows full. It doesn't wash very easily.
Okay.
And so anyway, they opted to discard the rock, and they're going to get new rock. Maybe choose a different color than what was there that was put in 30 years ago. Well, anyway, okay, what do you do with a bunch of wheelbarrows full of old, dirty rock?
Yep.
Well, they're putting it in their driveway.
Yep.
And they put on one of the free Facebook sites. You come and get it.
Yep.
Free, and people are coming to get it.
Bring your own shovel, bring your own buckets, and bring your own back.
Load your yes. And, maybe if a person had the right big screening thing, you could maybe get it cleaned the way but they didn't have the right setup. So people are picking up the rock as they're putting it out there. And so another disadvantage of rock mulch is it heats up.
Yeah.
So around shrubs, many shrubs are okay with that. But anything that that doesn't like heat, hydrangeas, for example, would much rather not have rock mulch. Roses would rather not have rock mulch. And so certain shrubs that don't like that heat, because rock mulch does heat up quite dramatically.
Yeah, and if you decide that you have your garden and then you put in your rock mulch and then you want to add things, going into a rock mulch garden, getting down on your hands and knees to clear an area to cut into that fabric and then put in a new plant, it does take a lot of work, and you really want to make sure you've got some good
knee pads or my kneeler, my garden kneeler. Yeah,
you bring a blanket out there or something like that.
Yeah, my knees hurt just thinking about that.
And part of that too, that is when you're moving rocks around, some of these rocks can be kind of jagged and they can rip your material. And so that can also be where weeds come in.
And then, once you get a rip in the material, then that's a spot for thistles to find the opportunity to come on through. So anyway, when we kind of look at it, and again, rock mulch has its place, definitely has its place. But wood mulch is becoming very popular. Now, when we moved our house 9 years ago, we had rock mulch at the old place, and advantages, disadvantages, okay. But when we went to our new place, I wanted a combination of perennial flowers and shrubs, and I opted to put all wood mulch around. Okay, now when we talk about wood mulch, which is great around perennial flowers too, perennial flower beds just lend themselves to a wood mulch. Now there's a couple of different types of wood mulch. There's wood chips that are actually kind of a piece of the wood. And there's shredded material that has gone through a shredder. Now, one complaint with the wood chips that I've heard over the years is that it can float around, can kind of blow around, and it doesn't nest together just the best. Okay, so along came shredded mulch that goes through a big tub shredder, and I love the shredded mulch because it nests together well. It doesn't blow, doesn't float around. And so versus the wood chips, both of these you can get in bagged at garden centers or national chain stores. Or I bought ours bulk from a tree service place. I contacted one of the people that cut down trees to see, do you offer mulch?
Yep.
I think if you're lucky, some give it free if they happen to be, if it's a waste product for them on a certain job. But the mulch that I got was one that actually sells it, a tree service that sells it. He shreds it up very nicely. It's a great product. And so anyway, it's not overly expensive, but I got a whole truckload of that. And
something like that, as opposed to like if you just need a small little bit, you can go to a store and get a bag.
Yeah, bag.
But your thing where you need a much bigger, if you go to what I'm saying is if you go to a tree service like this, they're not going to have a bag. You're going to need to have a truck, and you're going to be dealing in quantity.
In quantities, yep. And so if you go the bagged route, but again, look at the bags carefully, because I've bought some of the bags of the wood chips, and I haven't been happy with it. It just doesn't mesh together and create the kind of the weed barrier that I like. The chunks of wood have too many open spaces. I've noticed weeds just come up through that more. So again, around our whole landscape, we have it mulched with shredded wood material. Okay, now the advantages of that is it's very plant friendly. It's a natural product, almost like a forest floor, as stuff drops and decays, and wood mulch is a very natural plant friendly. It keeps the roots cool, moist, doesn't heat up, and lots of good to be said about it. And it's not easy, or it's not difficult when you want to plant something into it. It's soft on the knees, and you can just kind of brush it back, plant into it. Yeah. Exactly. The disadvantages is because it's a natural organic product, it does decompose over time. So I've found that every maybe 4 years or so, it's going to depend on moisture and different conditions, how thick you put it. Every 4 years, maybe 5 years, you're going to have to replenish some of it. So that's a disadvantage. It doesn't last as long as rock will. But, as it decomposes, it's creating kind of some good material that will feed the soil. So now, under the wood product, whether it's the chips or the shredded, what do you put under it? Okay, you can put the landscape fabric under it, but of course, then it's not going to decompose into something that's going to feed the roots if you have a landscape fabric under it. But yet the mulch itself, the wood mulch, doesn't do a real good job of keeping weeds out. It will do some. A person should have, I like to add a 5-inch layer because pretty soon it's going to settle
compact,
down into a 3-inch layer, and 3 inches is about the target. Weeds will find their way through that. So that's landscape fabric would help give better weed control. But here's what I've done under all of our shredded mulch in big areas, both around our foundation planting with the shrubs and also out in our perennial gardens. I use cardboard, sheets of cardboard. I save our cardboard, flattened cardboard, get some from the collection sites where you drop off cardboard, and I overlap it well. So right over the soil, I just lay the flat cardboard, overlap it well so that thistles can't find their way in between the cracks in it, overlap it well, and you can kind of lay that around perennials or shrubs, just kind of lay it around as close as you can to those, and then cover that with the shredded mulch. And sometimes I like to get it covered as quickly as I can because people driving by might wonder, well, what's Kinsler doing now? He's laying all this cardboard over his area.
Question about the cardboard. Do you use, because I know that some types of cardboard cannot be recycled.
Good point.
Like how do you know what kind of cardboard to use? Because
just the plain brown, the brown corrugated cardboard, not the kind of the fancy stuff that has the printing glossy boxes. So I'll discard that. That could probably have dye and stuff in it. And so just good old-fashioned brown corrugated cardboard works really, really well. And so easy to cut up. With a utility type knife to cut, if you need to kind of cut some of the areas, to fit around stuff. And it works really, really well. And then a good 5-inch layer of shredded wood material over that. And it works really, really well. Moisture penetrates just fine. And after about 3 to 4 years, maybe even a little less, maybe 3 years, the cardboard has disintegrated just into good stuff, organic stuff. So that benefits the soil too. And it makes a very plant-friendly atmosphere over the roots in the soil. And then, so over time then, as the shredded wood decomposes also, then that is able to go down into the soil. See, I don't have a barrier of weed fabric or something that's not going to allow the organic to get down to the root. Because as the organic material decomposes, then it is helping the roots. You're creating a nice kind of friendly, lots of good beneficial organisms and stuff helping our root system out. So that's why I prefer under wood chips, I prefer not to put the fabric, just my own preference. And because weeds will establish and kind of grow, weed seeds that land on top will find their way to germinate and sprout down.
There will always be a maple sap, maple wheat in our yard. Maples coming up all over, even through the mulch.
And so dealing with, what about weeds?
Yeah.
Weeds if they do start in mulch, they're quite easy to pull out if you get them young enough. And also we can use that same preen or the trifluralin Treflan. We can use that same weed preventer
right over the top of the mulch?
Over the top of the mulch.
Okay.
Watered in well with 1/2 inch to 1 inch of water, or even better yet, do it right before a rain is forecast in the spring of the year. Well, everything is still clean, weed-free. Get that weed, that pre-emergent granules on. moisture, rain will activate it. And I've had really good success with that. This is the first year because we were on the garden tour and I didn't want to be battling all these weeds. And so this is the first year that I actually ordered the Treflan online and spread the granules, and it gave really good control this year on weeds.
Now, you've gotten your mulch, your wood chips from a forester or from a tree service. When you go to the store, you have choices in color. Some people will get like the cedar colored chunks. We like getting the black ones because when they break,
you can get the colored mulches.
Yeah, and we get the black shredded mulch because if there's a spot where it kind of blends in with the dirt, if dirt shows up, it's kind of fine. I also think that the colors tend to pop a little bit more, so I really like that.
Good idea. A little contrast between the leaf color and the black mulch.
Yeah. So that's always really kind of a fun thing. And it's nice to do. And also, if you have a rock mulch and somehow a piece of rock gets into your yard and you hit it with a lawnmower, well, that can make a mess. If you do that with wood mulch will just disintegrate.
Ask me about a window we broke.
I know. That's
one time.
And I will say too, though, is if you've got a dog, your dog probably won't dig in the rock mulch, but our dog doesn't dig, but they do like to find the bigger chunks of wood mulch and bring those into the middle of the yard and chew those up.
Yeah,
so
but that's kind of an invitation to pets as well, the wood mulch.
Right.
Yeah.
It's something to consider. So it's.
Well, hey, as long as we're talking about mulch type materials, have you seen the little rubber pellets used as mulch?
I knew somebody who used it about 10 years ago, and I haven't gone back to see how it's done.
I love it on a playground.
Yep.
Like our grandkids' playgrounds. Gosh, it's a wonderful material because it's kind of cushiony. And of course, it's made from ground up tires, I believe is the major component of it.
Yeah.
But there are questions, though, of the materials that leach out of that, out of the tire material, it's not an organic material as such. And so are there any compounds that go into tire making that aren't so healthy for us? So there have been questions about rubber mulch, and I think there have been questions. I guess I haven't seen anything definitive yet, but there have been questions as, I guess, maybe whether it should be used on a playground even and with kids in contact. And also other questions as to whether those materials, if used around trees or shrubs, would any of those materials that went into the tire production, would those chemicals leach down into the root system and affect the root system of those trees adversely? And so still kind of watching. I don't think I would, because there's so many questions, I don't think I would use rubber mulch around my own trees and shrubs.
Well,
but again, that's not definitive.
Yeah, and I wonder too how long they last and whether they discolor. Because they're out there in the sun. And also, do they get hot? Because rubber does get hot in the sun.
Good point too.
Or you don't want that around. And when we were talking about rock mulch, one thing I forgot to ask about that. What about sometimes people use rock mulch around trees? Is that a good idea around trees?
It actually isn't. Around the shrub, the landscape around a shrub, foundation things. That rock can be used effectively. Around trees out in the yard, I would say no. Both for the compression that it does on the soil, but also here's one thing that we have found. When that rock mulch is put around a tree, a young tree trunk, you would think that as that tree trunk expands, it would push away rocks that would be in contact. But I have seen where once that rock kind of settles in and kind of gets firm, in future years, as that tree trunk tries to expand outward, I have found trees that have been suffering, actually dying, and when we've done the autopsy, rocks have been embedded in the trunk. Ooh. The rocks did not push away. Instead, the tree trunk tried to grow out and over and around, and you couldn't pry these rock pieces out of the trunk, and the tree died as a result. So if you do have rocks around a tree currently, you might want to pull those rocks back to make sure that they're never in contact with the trunk itself.
All right, let's take another quick break, and we'll come back more with mulching and landscaping.
If you're loving this podcast, be sure to check out our full lineup. From news and local politics to sports and true crime, find your next great listen right now at inforum.com/podcasts. That's inforum.com/podcasts.
All right, we're back, and this week we're talking about edging. We're talking about mulch, and we talked about rock mulch, we talked about wood mulch, we talked about rubber mulch, and now let's talk about edging.
Yes, because almost anytime you do a foundation planting or anything, or a perennial bed, and we talked about the mulch, the rock mulch, the rubber mulch, the wood mulch, but you need something along the edge to keep that in, to create a boundary between the lawn or other material and the planting area. So it's interesting how things have changed over the years. When we first started doing landscaping with our business, the black vinyl edging was the thing.
The rolled top.
Yeah,
there.
with the rolled top.
Round top.
And so you would dig a trench, sink that on in, and that made it a decent edging. Over time, it tended to kind of break down or pop up out of the soil. And
it can get nicked up by weed eaters or lawnmowers. Yeah.
And so I don't see as much of that anymore. Still see some, but now in favor are a little more natural materials, something that's going to last even longer than that and that's not going to pop up out of the soil or out of the material. And so when we redid our area, and first was the black plastic edging. But when we moved, I had saved a lot of old bricks, recycled bricks. And so we used bricks all around ours. Just dug a little trench, laid the bricks, and that makes a wonderful edging. We put it down so that the lawnmower can just glide right over it, and it holds the mulch in place quite well. So that works quite well. You can buy kind of pavers for that, for edging, that kind of interlock. There's a number of different types and colors that make a good edging. And also, one of the relatively newer edgings are the ones that landscape businesses install that are the long ribbon of concrete.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen those as well. And that makes a neat edging, a nice mowing strip. And what are they? Maybe, 4 inches wide, 6 inches wide? I guess I haven't measured
Very permanent.
Very permanent, yep. And they can go in nice configurations. I've seen those around trees to kind of hold in the mulch around a tree. And
We did the rubber edging, that you could kind of form, and having lived with that for a couple of years, and then not constantly, but often reshaping our garden as it grows and as we figure out what we want to do more with as relatively new gardeners, we've had to pull that out, and that can be kind of a chore. What we do now is we don't do any bought additional edging. We dig along. You take an edger, or a garden edger, which is kind of basically like an ice chopper, but maybe it's a half moon blade with a kind of a rolled top, so your foot can rest on it. You stomp it down into the ground and pull it back, and then you shovel up all that turf, so it cuts through the turf. And we've been able to do that. And then you dig up the dirt on the garden side that you want, and then we can lay the mulch out, and it'll hold the mulch in. So you get enough of a lip there.
I love that look. I've always admired that look at many of the public botanic gardens, such as in Canada, where they've got that, there's no edge material, that sharp cut down through the sod, and then you described it well. On the garden side of it, it's kind of scooped out, and so it holds the mulch. And I've always admired that clean look of that.
It's nice, and that the one thing is that, maybe with a lawnmower, maybe the grass grows a little bit longer right on the edge there, so you have to go over it with a weed eater or something like that. But for the most part, this is something that Sam saw and she liked, and so we've been doing that. And
I think the look of that.
We're going to pull out some more of our rubber edging that we put in, and again as we change barriers, and we're just going to do it with
easy to expand. expand.
Yes.
If you want to expand or reshape an area, easier than pulling up the edging.
Yeah.
And having to redo. So that's I always loved that look of that. Such a neat, clean look.
Say on some things we've got a side yard that's kind of overrun by snow on the mountain, and there I think I would still use rubber edging. Maybe I would reuse some of that rubber edging just because it's nice to have a physical barrier there that will kind of stop that or slow down the expansion of something like an invasive thing like snow on the mountain, which is fairly surface. It doesn't go too deep. I don't think the roots, I don't know if it would really go under there, but that's something I'm looking into.
Oh, yeah, interesting. Gosh, well, this has been good discussion, because as we kind of throw back and forth some topics for a podcast, I was thinking to myself, this is something that almost all of us, homeowners, businesses, commercial business, we all have. If you have any type of a landscape around your place, we all have that soil covered with something. So I thought this would be fun to kind of chat about.
This has been good, yeah. This has been very good. Well, if people have questions for you about lawn landscaping, plants, how to plant in
if you have a favorite
areas.
Mulch or something that has worked well for you,
what's the best way to
let
reach
us
you?
know. Email Donald.Kinsler, Kinzler, at ndsu.edu. And thanks everyone for sending in the emails and the notes.
And if they have pictures, they should send along pictures.
Oh, that's
too.
always great. Yes, love it. Successes, what's growing well in your yard and garden, some perennials you're especially proud of, or vegetables.
Yep. And if you've done some kind of a mulch area, or whether it's rock mulch, wood chips, or just whatever you've done, or edging that you're very proud of, send along a picture. We'll be happy to share them.
Great. Thank you, John, and thanks everyone for listening.